Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper. For those of you not familiar with the show, my guest and I will cover every angle of real estate, from interest rates to the economy to what's happening in Washington. Anything that could affect our local real estate markets will be covered here. If you got credit issues and you're trying to get your credit squared away so that you can purchase your first home, or you're having problems refinancing because your credit scores are low, there's numerous ways to get this fixed and or bring your credit scores up fast enough so that you're able to obtain financing. Reach out to me. I'd be glad to put you in touch with one of our credit experts. Also, if you're looking to refinance to the lowest rates in U.S. history and you'd like to take advantage of those, feel free to reach out. We can put you in touch with a local lending expert that we recommend. You've got questions and I've got the answers. If you have any concerns regarding real estate, the best number to reach me is the off-air phone number. It's 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Or you can leave a question via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. There's an Ask a Question button on the right-hand side of the website there. Just feel free to put in your name, phone number, best time to reach you back along with your question. I'll be glad to get back to you as soon as possible. Got a great show lined up for you guys today. Joining me on our panel is Louis Cammarosano, who is the general manager of HomeGain. Louis is often cited in the media as an industry expert in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN Money, Fox Business, Smart Money, MSN, and numerous others. We're going to discuss with you about what happened in the markets last week as well as what's on deck this week that can affect you and your real estate decisions. Louis, how you doing today, buddy?
Great. Yourself, Ryan?
Can't complain, buddy. The weather's we actually had a nice dose of the fall this past weekend. It's, normally football, right around football season, it's still hot well into October, but, the temperatures have kind of tapered back around 80s, which is like beautiful weather here in the D.C. metro area. So it's everything is nice. How about on the West Coast? How's everything out there?
Well, it's good. I don't know if you know this, but out in San Francisco, the hottest month of the year is September and then October. So when the ocean heats up a bit, the water kind of heats up the land here. So these are going to be our summer months. Oh,
nice. Yeah, it was a beautiful weekend. We got obviously football kicked off, with the NFL and whatnot. So it's a big it was a TV watching weekend for me. We have a lot to talk about today, Louis. Obviously, the end of last week, we had the jobs report, which was another dismal report, which is kind of really going to it could push Bernanke to maybe or even say what he plans to do as far as QE3 this week. This week, the Fed, basically, they're going to be meeting all week, and that meeting is going to end on Thursday. And I believe it's around 2:15 on Thursday. Bernanke will hold a press conference, and he's going to give basically the Fed's outlook on where things are and probably give some sort of indication on whether they plan on, instituting the QE3 or some form of that. Louis, you and I have talked at length that we kind of thought that he might hold off on doing this, but it seems like that there's more and more pressure coming from Wall Street that might make him show his cards a little bit earlier than we earlier may have thought. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to take place later this week?
Well, I think that labor participation information that we received, we saw in the labor report that unemployment went down from 8.3% to 8.1%. However, the number of people participating in the labor force has dropped to lows since 1980, when unemployment was very high. And as you and I talked about, the way they calculate unemployment is they don't include the people as being unemployed when they give up looking for work or they've been unemployed for a certain period of time. So I don't think anybody was fooled by that. People know that it was a very poor unemployment report. And that's leading a lot of the pundits to think that QE3 is going to be announced in September. I held the position that Bernanke will not do, absent some type of emergency, will not do QE3 until after the election, because he does not want to, first of all, appear to be alarmed. Also, he does not want to appear to be acting politically. And also because waiting another month isn't going to make one bit of a difference anyway. They're going to do QE3. But I think everybody's saying that, this week he's going to announce QE3. I think the only thing that will make him announce QE3 this week would be an adverse ruling in Germany as to the constitutionality of Germany, paying money to the ECB to bail out member states. If that doesn't happen, I think that he'll wait until cover of the election results like he did in 2010 when people aren't paying as much attention. Because I think if he does QE3, that makes the Fed kind of centerpiece of the upcoming presidential debates. And I think he's been trying to say the Fed should remain independent, not political. By doing QE3, he interjects politics right at the heart of the presidential debate. And I don't think he wants to do that. That's my prediction. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel kind of along those same lines, Lewis. And what I think is going to be really interesting to see is they've been in a lot of these interviews with a lot of the presidential nominees and for president and vice president on the Republican side, they keep asking questions as to if they were elected, would they get rid of Bernanke? And they don't want to quite answer that question, but it kind of seems as though that would be their play, is to get rid of Bernanke if the Republicans were to take office this November or next year.
Romney, as typical, has said he would get rid of him, and he's also said he's doing a good job, so you never know what he's saying. I think that Bernanke does not want to be the focus of the issues of the presidential debate.
Yeah, I agree.
He'll interject himself if he does QE3 because that immediately becomes a talking point for both parties.
Yeah, and what's extremely puzzling to me is anytime they basically, anybody asks a question about, well, what's different from QE3 from QE1 and QE2? What's going to change from basically, injecting more money, more stimulus into the markets from the previous times that we've done this? And he really doesn't answer the question straight because ultimately it's not going to change anything.
Because that's not what it's about. It's about we passed the point of no return where we owe so much money, and the only way we can pay it back is by issuing more debt that we buy ourselves through the Federal Reserve. And Europe is in the same position. The only way they can pay the money back that all the member states owe that they've overspent is by issuing more debt.
Yeah, issuing more debt, of which the Fed is one of the largest holders of treasuries, which we spoke about previously on the show. It's what I think we talked about some in the 63% range, somewhere in there, Lewis.
Well, where they buy, yeah. I mean, they're the buyer of last resort. They'll end up being the buyer of only resort at some point.
Yeah, and so, for all of you listening out there, and we constantly are talking about what the Fed is and how the Fed's decisions have, widespread implications across the board for people that are out there that are considering buying property, buying real estate. You guys are benefiting tremendously now if you're in the market because what the Fed has created is this artificially low mortgage interest rate market where if you have the means and the ability to purchase real estate right now, it's a phenomenal opportunity for most people anyway. Obviously, it depends on where you're buying and what the market bears. If you're trying to buy something for an investment property, obviously you need to make certain returns. But the most important part of most type of real estate investing is okay, well, how much is it going to cost me? Can you get a loan on that property instead of having to pay cash? I mean, I would think that it's much smarter to be able to take a $100,000 loan out, even on an investment property, if you had to put 20 or 25% down, versus and maybe borrowing somewhere sub 5% versus having to take all of your cash out and put that out on a property to not obtain any loan. Now, some people are caught in a situation where they just can't get a loan. And I'm sure that this is, many people's situation that they're trying to buy another property, or even if it's just their first property, and they're having trouble getting loans. And only thing I can advise at this point, if you're having trouble getting financing, is to sit down with a loan officer or professional that can review your individual situation and kind of help you. A lot of the times I've seen that it's the income that's being reported on tax returns and whatnot, because a lot of people are self-employed and they're writing off so much, so many different expenses, that their adjusted gross income is just not enough to support them obtaining a home loan. So it would be important for them, the loan officer to, maybe touch base and talk with the person's accountant to find out, what it is that can be accomplished in the next year or 2 years to get that person in a financial position to be able to buy. Many of the problems that are taking place out there in the mortgage world is due to, banks not really wanting to lend money at the low interest rates. Okay, that's my opinion. If it was my money, I don't want to really lend it out at 3 to 4% when I could be putting it somewhere else and making 6 to 8%. So what this has caused the banks are borrowing from the Fed at next to nothing. There's some like $2 trillion worth of excess reserves that are sitting on these banks' balance sheets that they're doing nothing but investing back in the markets. They're not lending this money out to the common folk or business owners or people that want to obtain mortgages. It's very difficult. However, if you're on the side of, you do qualify, you've got good credit scores, you got stable jobs, stable income, and you can, be able to buy multiple properties, I can't urge you enough to at least consider doing so right now. The long-term implications of of the Fed's ability to continue print more money or put more stimulus into the market is going to have long-term implications probably. We're going to see inflation at some point rear its ugly head, and it already has happened, but it's not as noticeable, I don't feel, right yet. I think that when it hits, it's going to hit really hard. You could be looking at food prices doubling, and that could happen in the next 5-6 months. I mean, it could happen sooner than that. But to be able to protect you and your family from long-term inflation, to lock in your household cost, your cost of shelter at sub 5% interest rates, depending upon your qualifications and whatnot, it just makes sense. And for most people, it's sub 4%. Great opportunity out there, and the best advice that I can give is just speak with somebody. If you're in a situation now where you're considering renting versus owning, just go and talk to a professional, because they can at least let you know what your options are, and you can make an educated, informed decision at that point in time. Don't just assume because your friend, your neighbor, your grandmother had an experience, and all of a sudden, they've kind of painted this picture for you that there's no way that you're going to be able to get a home loan. While many have struggled getting them, it doesn't mean that that's going to be your case. Lewis, one of the, I don't know if you, in talking with a lot of people, you've heard similar stories, but I feel like, when one person has a bad experience with a lender or a real estate person, it tends to, rub off on everybody that they know. So everybody else just takes that as the golden word at that point, and they kind of get turned off. And I feel like a lot of people that have gone through the foreclosures and short sales have like a bad taste in their mouth, and it's kind of, maybe swaying potential new home buyers to hold off.
But clearly is the case. You see people who you respect. They could be parents, they could be coworkers who basically got in over their head during the mid-2000s. They took out loans that they probably shouldn't have taken out, and their houses are underwater. Now, what people are failing to see is that while that was a mistake, it doesn't mean that that is an instructive example if you look at your current situation, current house prices, current mortgage rates, and whether it makes sense to buy. It clearly, in retrospect, it makes sense for those people to get extended the way they did, to take out teaser loans, ARMs, pay $800,000 for a $200,000 house. But the circumstances are different, and I think it's smart to look back and look at those mistakes that people made as instructive, but they're not necessarily dispositive as to saying to yourself, that's it, I'm never going to buy a house because too many people have done poorly.
Yeah, and now that we're so far into this so-called recovery period, there's been many people from 3 and 4 years ago that have either been foreclosed on or short sold their home that are now available now to purchase again. And my hope is that they take, the whatever it was that caused them, if it wasn't, them losing a job or something, had some sort of hardship that caused them to default, if it was more of a strategic default because they were just overextending themselves, that this time around that they really sit down and understand that those lending qualifying ratios that are out there, the reasons why those are in place is because, who should really be borrowing, having a mortgage payment that's 55% of their overall gross income? Those numbers don't add up. You're getting a paycheck for $2,000 a month gross, and that's the numbers that the lender's using to qualify you. But that's not the money that you're actually bringing home. And all too often I see a lot of people, they say, well, if I qualify, then it must be okay. I should be able to pay all of my other bills. And it's just not that simple, guys. I mean, they don't take into consideration, a lender's not taking into consideration your utility bills, your food costs, if you have child care. All of the other, miscellaneous items that are not showing up on your credit report are not taken into consideration. So, the best thing that you can do is to, when you're going through the loan process, also let, the loan officer, the professional that you're working with, let them know what your overall costs are so maybe they can help you better determine what's going to be your comfortable mortgage payment. I think that if everybody kind of took the approach that to be more conservative and, instead of pushing up to 375 and staying at the 325 range, it might limit your options as to what you're to buy, but it's better to limit your options and being able to afford your house for the next 30 years than it is to overextend yourself and have to get foreclosed on in the next 2 to 3 years. I just feel like it's a smart play to stay conservative, and especially to be able to take advantage of the historically low interest rates and to lock that long-term cost of shelter in for the next 30 years. Guys, we're coming up on a break. When we come back, FHA may waive its 3-year foreclosure waiting period. And I'll let you know about that when we come back. Stay right there.